Hey out there. So in this particular episode of Writing Notes, we're going to talk about evaluation. Now, I hope that you guys have watched my video on analysis because evaluation tends to build on analysis. So, whereas analysis is taking apart something, a text, which could be like a football game or a novel, poem, fashion outfit, whatever it is, any sort of thing, taking it apart and identifying its specific components is analysis. The step beyond that, where you start to make value judgments, is what we call evaluation. Evaluation is, the root word of evaluation is value. So this is all about, is this good, is it bad, is this effective, ineffective, does it achieve its goals or not? These sorts of value-laden questions. So there are a couple of different ways to set up your evaluation. So the first thing that you want to do when you're trying to evaluate something is to decide on what type of evaluation is appropriate for this situation. So if, say, you're a political pundit or like a political science student or something like that, or a history student, you may want to be, say, evaluating a political decision. So X piece of legislation was passed. You may ask questions like, did it achieve its goals? Was it effective? So these are very sort of pragmatic questions where you're looking at results. If you're thinking about, say, an ethical decision, should I do this thing or not do this thing, something like that, you may ask questions like, is it morally right to do it? Is it ethical or is it unethical? Things like this. So you've got sort of different scales of values. They can be moral, they can be pragmatic, they can be legal, they can be ideological, whatever it is. So you've got different scales. Often when we talk about evaluating, say, a literary text, or my classes, my English 102 classes are specifically going to be evaluating textbooks. So when we talk about evaluating something like that, we're typically talking about questions like, does it achieve its goals? How well does it achieve its goals? Does it effectively convey information? Does it effectively convey ideas or teach students or what have you? Now there's a couple of different ways. Once you've figured out your scale of values, there's a couple of different ways in which you can come up with your evaluation. Basically, your evaluation is going to be either it's effective, it's ineffective, it's good, it's bad, whatever it is. It doesn't have to be sort of 100%, though. Like, most things are not perfectly good or perfectly bad, completely effective, completely ineffective. So you want a more sophisticated answer than that generally, but when you've got your scale of values and you're trying to decide, either you're trying to decide how effective or ineffective it is, or why you think it's effective or ineffective, there's a couple of different ways that you can sort of set up that analysis and that evaluation. One is by comparing and contrasting to a real particular example. So if I, for instance, look at two textbooks side by side, two, say, English 102 textbooks side by side, I can say, all right, this one is a better textbook for these reasons, or this one is a less effective textbook for these reasons. So that gives you something very, very straightforward, very, very specific to compare and contrast. And then, of course, you decide which book, which text is more effective and why. Your other option in terms of evaluation, and this is probably more common in terms of the way that we evaluate things on a day-to-day basis, and also probably in terms of the way that we do sort of scholarly evaluation, is you compare a particular real-world text against a sort of imagined Platonic ideal. So this textbook is very strong, but it falls short in these ways. What that does is it's sort of premised on the idea that there is a perfect textbook that could conceptually be written. And again, I'm just using textbook because that's what my 102 students are going to be writing about. You could do this with anything: novel, poem, pizza, shoes, football game, whatever you want to evaluate. There's an idea that there could be a perfect version of that thing. There could be a perfect textbook, a perfect football game, there could be a perfect shoe, whatever it is. The ideal. And then you compare the real-world example to that. One of the drawbacks of this approach is that any sort of real-world example is almost always going to fall short of perfection, of the ideal. So it's actually very hard to sort of, or it can be very hard to sort of figure out how to say positive things in your evaluation if you're comparing the textbook to an ideal. So your other option, your sort of variation on that option, is to scale it down from an ideal to here's sort of the average for what this thing does. So here's the sort of criteria an average textbook would meet, or an average football game, average shoe, pizza, Chinese restaurant, fashion show, whatever it is. And then from that point you say, all right, this is above average in these ways or below average in these ways, and that's my evaluation. So again, evaluation is all about determining a scale of values. So effective, ineffective, good, bad, beautiful, hideous, saintly, evil, whatever it is. Your scale of values, and then you look at the components, which you gain through analysis, so you get that insight through the process of analysis. You look at those components, and then you say, all right, here's where this particular text falls on the scale of values. Thanks.